Okay, Bramborough back with some Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts. Our Italy campaign just recently started, and started in 1910, and we're about halfway through 1910 now. It's July. A little bit of a slow start, and I know that I spent, I spent a lot of time on one ship design yesterday. And part of that was just a little bit rusty, and some of the stuff is not quite new. But thought it'd be good to include kind of a full ship design process for, once or twice maybe. I am not going to do that for every ship design. That just takes so much time. But I thought it'd be good just to kind of show kind of the process of how I approach ship design in this game. I thought some people might find that interesting. Okay. So, and since then, since the end of the last episode, I've designed another ship. Another battleship, in fact. However, this battleship has a completely different purpose and design philosophy behind it than the Falcone that we did last episode. And so before I talk about that, folks who are familiar with the campaign in Ultimate Admiral Dreadnoughts are going to be very familiar with what I'm about to talk about, and it'll be old hat, and probably many of you will even know more about it than I do. However, for folks who are newer to the game, or maybe even don't have the game, and are watching, deciding if they want the game, may not be aware of this. So I'll just talk about it a little bit. So there's kind of, multiple different levels going on here. And most of the ships which one designs and builds and puts into the fleet are optimized for fighting tactical battles. Right? That seems obvious and common sense. But there's other things going on. Winning the tactical battles is certainly important. I mean, probably the most important factor in winning a war. But it is not the only one. And sometimes winning every battle you fight may not be sufficient to win the war. Because out here on the campaign map, there's something else going on, and that is called power projection and blockades. And without going into details, and I am kind of conjuring up several-month-old remembrances, but basically how it works is one Navy has an overall power projection value, which is compared to the power projection value of the opposing Navy. If one Navy's power projection is high enough compared to the others, and I'm kind of subconsciously bouncing back and forth between Italy and Austria here, but if one Navy reaches a high enough superiority in power projection over the other, then a blockade is imposed on the weaker power. And blockade just knocks the stuffing out of that power's economy and naval budget, and also starts driving up unrest. And so you can, if you've got a fairly small Navy, but you're out there just, wrecking in the tactical battles, okay. But if in the process you get a blockade slapped on you, you can run out of money. And you can find yourself in a situation where perfectly good ships that are winning battles and gathering up victory points, and you're trying to decide how many of them you're going to scrap because you can't afford them anymore. You could, when you didn't have the blockade on you, but now you can't. So, kind of big picture over here in the fleet, you know, you need a big enough fleet and an affordable enough fleet for enough size to have a good power projection value. And the ships that are designed for combat to do well in the tactical battles can be pretty expensive. The power projection doesn't take into account all of those expensive doodads that we put on our ships, right? It doesn't care what the length of the 12-inch gun is, and it doesn't care that it's got the best possible range finder and really good on pitch and roll and offset and speed and all. It doesn't care about any of that. There's only two factors that matter for power projection, and that is tonnage and range. That's it. So, it's a good idea in this game to create at least a few ships. You know, I mean, the specific situation, the country, what the opposing, it's variable, but there is some value in having some ships that are optimized for, well, they're not really optimized at all. They're maximized, min-maxed for one thing and one thing only. As much range and tonnage possible at the least cost, because you don't want to spend a lot of money on these things. You're just trying to up your power projection value, partially because, you know, it's pretty good to impose a blockade on the enemy if you can, but even more important, to keep a blockade from being imposed on you. So one's a nice to have. One is more or less mandatory. So I hope that will kind of explain the idea behind the battleship that I have designed, and we'll take a quick look at it. And that is the Blocco Uno class. Didn't even really give them names. This is, you know, if this is wrong in Italian, then, you know, blame Google Translate. This is basically Blockade 1. That's the name of this ship. I don't even really think of them as ships. They're really just kind of, you know, afloat administrative units. And then the next one will be Blocco 2 and Blocco 3 and Blocco 4. Hopefully I don't have to build more than 4 of these. So it is a battleship, and it is 28,000 tons. But you can see here, it is almost just half the cost of the Falcone battleship that I designed in the last episode. Okay, because this thing is built cheap. Let's take a look at the design. And nope, that's not it. Okay, here we go. All right, so I went for the max possible tonnage, and then filled it up pretty much. I didn't leave any room for expansion like I did on the other battleship. And we wanted to do that as cheaply possible. As cheaply as possible. Okay, so I made it 25 knots, which did add a little bit of cost, but I'll talk about that in a bit. Max range, max bulkheads, because that adds weight at not too much unit cost. I did give it a little bit of beam. I don't remember lowering the draft like that. I wonder if there's some kind of other thing I did that made it This wasn't intentional, but it works. I'm not worried about it. Crew quarters, cramped. Now, just from a tonnage for cost perspective, one could make the argument that the way to go is spacious, right? If you max this out, that adds tonnage at very little cost, if any. However, it also sucks up crew. It makes it have a bigger crew. And crew capacity is not infinite. You know, you've only got a little bit of a crew pool. And not only new combat ships, but also replacements for casualties in the fighting ships has to come out of that crew pool. So I went with cramped on this because I wanted the smallest possible crew on this to lessen their impact on the crew pool. But spacious works too if you want to go with that philosophy, if one wants to go with that philosophy. And then there's a lot of missing or unused components all down through here. This thing is burning coal. I did go with induced boilers because I didn't want it super slow. But this is the basic expansion engine, the lowest one, I think. Well, yeah, I can't look at the choices. It doesn't have an aux. Did give it a little bit of maneuverability with the rudders and steering and stuff, but these really don't add that much cost for what they give you. Harvey is the lowest possible armor I have, and this is important. Okay, do not want improved armor quality for these things, because those hugely increase the cost of armor while decreasing weight. And what we're looking for is kind of the lowest cost ways to add weight in this case, right? X amount of Harvey armor costs a lot less and adds and is heavier than the croup armors above it. Okay. I did give it Barbette 3 because I don't want it to blow up. But I did not give it anti-torp. It's just a single bottom. Did not give it anti-flood, and it doesn't have a citadel. These are all real expensive. They add weight, but they add a lot of cost. And so didn't put any of that stuff on there. I didn't really mess with any of this stuff too much. I did give it a nice rangefinder. I did do that. Okay. So we've got a pretty low armor quality for our tech with the Harvey, which means I packed on a lot of armor. 15.7 inch main belt, well over 7 inches of main deck. You get the idea. Okay. Now, some of the choices I made, though, on things like the rangefinder and the speed is, this is not intended for combat. We don't want to fight with these things. Essentially, this is a way to play the much more abstract game of the power protection on the campaign map. However, it's still a ship, and it can't, it's got to be in some status of readiness in order to be counted for power projection. Therefore, sometimes these things do find their way into a battle. And if they're in there with other ships, other friendly ships, then they can at least kind of act as a long-range gunfire support role sort of a thing. Stand off, try not to get hit. But, so we give them some main armament and gave them the rangefinder. They might find themselves in one of these darn destroyer ambush battles. So I gave him a lot of aft firing secondaries, and so it still has some armament, but because it might have to fight. But if it finds itself in a battle alone against an enemy battleship, ideally, what I'll do with this thing is just turn around and run and get out of the battle. Just put a cut in, and then cut back into the video. Okay, we escaped. And that's why I gave it some speed, so that it can disengage from like a 1v1 or what have you if it has to. And so all these choices means that hopefully we have a ship here that gives us a lot of very reasonably affordable tons for power projection, and can still at least have some minimal capability to disengage or provide a little bit of support on those few unwanted occasions when it does find itself in battle. All right, so that's the idea of this class, and it only costs, I think, less than 60% of what the Falcon class does. As a matter of fact, it's only marginally more expensive at 28,000 tons than our Legacy San Giuseppe class is at 20,000 tons. So we're getting 8,000 tons extra, which is probably about 30% more tonnage at less than 25% more cost. I didn't get the calculator out, but the tonnage, the cost per tonnage on this ship is way less than the Falcon, and I think it works out to be better than the San Giuseppe 2 as well. Okay, so that's what I did off camera. I made this quirky, silly ship that's really kind of a gameism to play the power projection blockade mechanic in this game. Right. So I think that's enough preamble. Let's click through a few months here. Things are getting pretty close with Austria here in politics. Where are we at here? Yeah, we're at minus 88 with Austria-Hungary. And I think at minus 99 or minus 100 is when you get your okay, we're at war event. And so one thing that I've done is, I think we saw in the last episode that I had kind of moved several ships over to EMED ports, and I've gone through the fleet, and what I've done is I've set all of... Oh, it resorted itself. Let me sort it by area. Yeah. All of the West Med ships, by the way, are 3 existing battleships are out of their refit. They're available again. But the West Med ships, I kept them in limited like we had before. But all the ships we have in the East Med, I've bumped them up at least to in being. So they're costing more, but they should be training their crews up a little bit faster. Okay. Yeah, relations drop a little bit more with Austria-Hungary. think this is a placeholder. I don't think that submarines are implemented in the game yet. But hey, we researched it. Yay. My understanding of submarines is that that'll be another kind of abstraction thing, basically on the campaign map. We're not going to be designing and fighting with submarines in tactical battles. But these will play into the monthly transport losses, I think, of on the campaign map. Is my understanding of how submarines are going to be implemented. Yeah, right here. Yeah. So Germany is continuing to lose merchant ships in the North Sea, but the Brits are losing some in the East Med. I mean, Britain, obviously has the biggest navy. But I would imagine that most of them are up there fighting Germany. They probably don't have a big presence down here in the East Med. And so Austria-Hungary has got local superiority down here, at least compared to Britain. And so the British are losing some transports. And so then when submarines are implemented, they will play heavily into this particular mechanic. Which it's never been clear to me exactly how closely or not so closely this is related to Blockade. I don't think it is very closely, but it's the same sort of thing. When you lose when a country loses transports, then that bites into their GDP and their growth, which shrinks the economy, which then shrinks the naval budget. And it may have an impact on unrest and naval prestige as well. I don't quite remember that bit. And one thing that I remember from earlier versions a few months ago is you get these convoy battles on the map where it's either you're defending a convoy against a raid, or you're the one raiding the other guy's convoy, and there will be, anywhere from 4 or 5 to as many as like 13 or 14 transports there, and your quote mission unquote is to run in there and sink as many transports as you can. Transports lost in those battles, as far as I could ever tell, don't affect the overall transports for that nation. Because I played multiple campaigns where I know, I sank 20, 25, 30 transports in various battles. And then I would keep track of these monthly messages to see how many they lost on the just the monthly abstract losses like this. And then at the end of the war, where it says total number of transports sunk is X, yeah, they didn't add up. But if I didn't count the ones I had sunk in tactical battles, it was usually pretty close. So anyway, spent enough breath on that. Okay, I'm kind of feeling like it's any turn now. Where are we at now? We're at 91. Do have a little positive. Did we have some ships finish building? We did. Finished a couple of CAs and a CL. Which is why we're back to a positive balance. I don't want to, I think I'm going to go ahead and get another one of those Falcone class building. What I don't understand here is Falcone is costing 2.5 million a month while building, whereas apparently Stingel is only 1.8 million. Which is nice. I'm glad Stingel is less expensive. But I don't understand why there's a difference. Okay. Relations continue to deteriorate. This probably puts us at minus 95. Same trends. Germany's transports are just getting wrecked up there in the North Sea. And I'm sure Britain would like for us to get into this war so it stops losing transports in the East Med. Okay, I think it's time. They're going to declare war if we don't act cowardly and reduce tension. Invest a portion of our naval funds on their own industry. It's a sign of goodwill. Well, let's see. This is the warlike response. Naval prestige. Yeah, we'll get a little bit of unrest from that. Okay. I mean, we're at 0. We can cave in and give them $28 million. I don't think so. And it only gives us +5 relations. So what? That would take us back to 95 or 94. Oh, that would help. I mean, this is one, I guess one would only use it if the fleet were just in really, really bad shape. Like really small, got rid of a bunch of ships. You know, like maybe you had a recent war and you haven't recovered from it. But on the other hand, if you're in that situation, you don't have the 28 million either, do you? Well, this is kind of the minor wimp out, and this is the major wimp out option. Yeah. No. We're not gonna. We're gonna tell them to go pound sand. War. Da da da. And we're able to build a little bit bigger destroyer whenever we get around to building another destroyer, which I don't think is imminent. We have researched better towers. I don't think that's gonna. That's a pretty big item to include in a refit. I mean, refits are good for kind of tinkering around the edges, like I did with the flash fire stuff. You know, if you don't like your ammo loadout, you can go in and do stuff like that. It's not very expensive, and it takes just a few months. Yeah, but you go in there and try refitting basically the entire superstructure of the ship. I mean, that darn refit is going to last probably close to at that. You know, I mean, at that point, just design a new ship. because the refit probably isn't going to save much time, and it's going to be super expensive. Well, somehow Germany stopped losing transports in the North Sea. Maybe they all sank. There were none left to sink. Okay, well, but we don't have any battles yet. Now, the funny thing about that power projection bit that I was talking about is the actual power projection numbers don't show up here until there's actually a blockade in place. So it's kind of a guessing game on how close or how safe you are on the blockade. I think we're pretty safe from being blockaded because we've got 30 ships, whereas Austria has 22 ships, and we're about the same. They've got 7, we've got 8 of high tonnage capital ships, battleships and battlecruisers. So I'm pretty sure that, oh man, and their light cruisers and destroyers have just been wrecked already in this war they've been fighting for a while with France and Britain. So I'm pretty sure we are in no danger of getting blockaded as far as Austria goes. The one thing that I'm not sure about, because there's there's some folks I know who play this game, and I know that they know what they're talking about. And I asked, so how much of power projection and blockade mechanics changed compared to several months ago? And what I was told was it all works the same as it always did, except it's not overall on the entire map. It's done region by region. So even though Germany, actually their fleet really isn't that much bigger than ours, but Germany's up here. If I understand correctly, and I may not, but their navy's up here fighting Britain. Germany doesn't have, as far as I can tell, they don't have any ships in the EMED. So I think we don't have... Oh, this is a new window. Okay, well, I was wrong. You hover over the name of the region and it tells you what's going on. All right, let me digest this a little bit. So at the moment, Austria does have more power projection than we do in the East Med. However, they don't have nearly enough to impose a blockade. Basically, the stronger power needs about double the weaker powers. So we're at 60, just for round numbers, we're at 6,000, they're at 8,500. Austria would need a little bit over 12,000 power projection to impose a blockade on us. But it's not just in and out where you're bouncing back and forth between 49%, 51%. Once a blockade is imposed, then it takes a while to build up enough tonnage. Relative tonnage. You need about 70. So at 50% you get blockaded, but you need to get your relative tonnage up to about roughly 70-ish% to break the blockade, which means you need a combination of building program and sinking the other dude's ships in order to bring that gap down. So I think we're fairly safe from getting blockaded at the moment on the East Med side. In the West Med, yeah, it's just us and France. And actually, it looks like France is much lower than us, which suggests that they've pulled the majority of their naval power up into the North Atlantic. Yeah, no. That's paltry. Okay, 3,700 and... Wow. Britain just owns the North Sea. Straight up. While Germany pretty much owns the Baltic. Interesting. So I was kind of making a joke, but maybe that is what's happening. Maybe we didn't see more German transport losses up here because there is no German presence in the North Sea anymore. Kind of wondering. Yeah, I think I heard Irish Sea doesn't really play into this. I'm kind of wondering where France's naval power is. We've got 44 ships. They don't have that much in the English Channel. They've got very little in the North Atlantic. And they don't have that much in the West Med. Maybe they have tons of ships under repair. I don't know. It's kind of interesting. Okay, we don't really know what, let's look and see how many ships is Austria building. They're only building one, they're repairing 11. So those could actually all kind of pop out and drive that power projection up. I don't know if repairing ships count for it. I don't think so. But just to kind of hedge our bets, how much tonnage do we have at Catania? Catania's fairly full, actually. Got plenty of room at Toronto. Let's move I think I want to leave these over here. I don't want to pile all our battle cruisers into the Adriatic because some Austrian ships could come over here. I think what I'll do is, since these guys are out of refit, I'm going to move the battleships to Toronto. And bring some escorts. We'll bring a couple CAs. We'll bring a CA and a CL with them. And then let's bring these two DDs over to Catania. Okay, France wants to become an ally. I think we're going to ally with France. War! Now we're formally at war with Germany. That was obviously coming. Well, we lost one transport, but Austria lost 6 transports. In the East Med. Okay. It's been a couple turns. Yeah. Germany hasn't come back into the North Sea. Yeah, both of our power projections ramped up there. Because we moved 5 or 6, 7 ships, including 3 battleships, into the East Med. And I would presume that Austria must have had some ships come out of repair. Yeah, they repaired a couple of armored cruisers. That was a pretty big power projection jump for them for just a couple of armored cruisers. Look at all those ships Germany was repairing. Been a lot of fighting going on up there. I noticed that our monthly balance went way up. So we went to war, and then we got a huge infusion of cash to the naval budget because we're at war that the government gave us. This will go away again. Now that we've got a lot more room to work with, let's during wartime, let's go ahead and just max crew training. We're going to be losing transports, so we need to keep up with losses. You want a comfortable margin above, but 100% is the number you can't go below. Let's go with a 50%. This is basically the rate at which you're building transports. And 100% is the amount that the economy as it is right now the amount needed to keep it at its current level. So if you're above 100%, that excess, right now 2%, translates into growth. I think is how it works. That's my understanding. So we've bumped up our transport building capacity. I think we're a little closer to needing to think about increasing our shipyard size. We still have enough room to build the biggest ship we can. However, the next time we get a better hull, we may be shipyard limited, and this takes a long time. I don't know, 34,000 tons, that's a pretty big ship in damn near any era. I mean, I don't think we're ever going to build like a Yamato or anything. I think maybe instead we're going to be losing some cruisers, most likely. Maybe not. But let's build up our CAs and CLs a little bit. Let's get 2 more of these guys, 3 more of these guys going. Four more light cruisers. And with the budget we have, I don't see any reason not to unsuspend our remaining 2 battleships. And finally, let's start building 2 of these blockade battleships. And I'm just going to initially set them all to build in Gaeta. I thought we could rename ships. I thought they added that a long time ago. Why can't I change? Is it just the class? Oh, there we go. Blockade 2. I did them this way because if they have, I didn't want the blockade battleships. I didn't ever want in the future to be confused. Like a battle pops and I see the names of the ships. I wanted it to be crystal clear that this was one of your blockade ships. That's why I named them the way I did. Naming them the way I am. Okay, no battles yet. And that probably has something to do with I haven't changed my fleet posture. It'd be cool if we could, in the port view, if we could change the the sea control, the end being, if we could change it here instead of, we're going to have to go to fleet, we're going to have to sort by port, and I'm going to put all my Catania ships, which are smaller, I'm going to put them all on sea control. Some of them were already in sea control just because I moved them, so they went to sea. Okay, so those guys are on sea control, and then let's take up in Bari, we've got these 3 battle cruisers. Let's take 2 of them and put them on sea control, see what kind of trouble they can get into. Petrona and San Bartolomeo. Let's take all these ships out of Catania and move them up to this choke point. Should all be on sea control. Okay, let's see what that does. Britain wants to ally. Okay. And we have a coastal raid. We're doing the raiding. And looks like the idea is our battle cruisers plus a CL wandered into this battle. Looks like we're raiding them. And our mission, so these ships are here defending. However, what we're trying to do is sink these 4 transports is the goal. Okay, so what do we have here? This is like the first time you can actually see sort of what the enemy ships are actually like, which I think is a little unrealistic. I mean, this kind of information, you know, speed, the basics of the armament, an idea of the armor. This kind of crap is pretty much known in peacetime. It's hard to hide that stuff. Like more detailed things like the technology of rangefinders, you know, that can stay a little bit more secret. But the basic ships, they're all pretty well known. I mean, everybody has a Jane's, right, in their in their wardroom. 24 knots. So we have a speed advantage on these battleships. They've got 13-inch guns, 13.4 inch. Yeah, our battlecruisers are not going to do well in a stand-up fight against these 2 battleships. It's just not going to happen. And I don't know. These are legacy designs, so they may not even be all that more accurate. But those 10-inch guns probably are not going to penetrate the armor of these battleships very much. So I think our play is going to be trying to get in there, sink the transports. We'll get some VP for that. And then maybe we can beat up on this armored cruiser. And then run away from the battleships. I think that'd be a pretty good first combat. And the Saida, the R means reinforcing, which means she's not, I don't think, sometimes I've been wrong when you get in the battle, but I think this means that she's going to be separated and is going to be a further distance away. So I may just take Saida and just turn her around and tell her to get out. But I've been talking for a while in this episode as we led up to war, and I found various things to chatter on about. And I don't know exactly how long this episode's been going already, because I didn't time it really. But I know if I go in here and fight a battle now, it's going to turn into a pretty long one. So I'm going to go ahead and cut off this episode here, and then we'll come back in the next episode and see how this coastal raid turns out, our first tactical battle of the campaign. If you like what we're doing with the channel, you like the content, then leave a like, leave a comment, maybe even subscribe. But at any rate, thank you very, very much for watching. I appreciate it.